Ladies and gentlemen, the war is over. Everything that we've been hoping for all season has finally happened, and yours truly is back to talk about it. Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco officially fired from the Chargers, from the Spanos family. And man, it's been a long time coming. It's been something we've all been looking forward to, in such a disastrous season this has been. But it's really nice to get that weight off of our shoulders and really be able to, get into candidates and really move into this offseason. I know we got 3 games left, but I'm really just looking forward to the offseason at this point. I think a lot of us are. I'm happy to be here back with you again, and we can just get into it. So without further ado, Miles and your boy Colin, we are back here for another episode of Chargers Powder Hour. Our initial reactions to the firings of Telesco and Brandon Staley. How you feeling, man? How you doing? Obviously, I think it's a good time to be a Chargers fan. The 5-9 record does not reflect how good I feel as a Chargers fan, anyway. So, how are you doing, man? How are you feeling? And yeah, let's get right to it.
Feeling pretty good, man. Feeling good. Really excited to talk about this today. We haven't had a chance really to talk about it since everything's gone down. We've talked about it online a little bit and just kind of joined in with the reaction of pretty much everybody else, not just Chargers fans, but really the entire NFL media, sports world was kind of you know, I shouldn't say shocked, but just waiting for this to happen more so. So it finally did happen. Chargers break the news on Friday morning, right before the weekend, right after a historically disastrous game in Las Vegas, which I'm surprised I watched as much of it as I did, but it also almost kind of felt like a soul cleansing moment where I could just purge all of these not so great feelings about this coach, about this roster, about this team, about this organization that I do love and care about. So I do want to hold it to a high standard, and I think fans everywhere should. I don't think it's a bad thing to criticize or call out your team for not living up to expectations and standards. So uh, I'm excited, man. There's a silver lining on the horizon, a big one too. There's a real chance for this organization, this family, the Spanos family, to really right a wrong and show that you're serious about building a true championship caliber ball club.
Yeah, I think we got our first really initial thoughts from the Spanos family earlier today in an interview that I read, just kind of shedding some light on what it's going to look like going forward, and it really, for me as a fan, I read some things I really wanted to hear in there about taking everyone, they're going to say the same old, leaving no stones unturned, taking everything into consideration. But they commented a lot. I'm sure we'll get into it in a bit, but they commented some on the whole, first time head coach. Obviously we have a history with that, and also with some of the cap situations we're dealing with this year, how that's could affect any kind of coaching interviews, hires, whatnot. So they shed some nice light on that. A lot of things I was hoping to hear that went down in that interview. But yeah, it was time. We all knew it was time. I know I sent you the article. Somebody reported on one of the Spanos at the game. John Spanos at the game said this shit ends tonight when referring to the Raiders game last Thursday night. And yeah, I think it's been written in stone really for a majority of the season now. But it finally happened, and I think a big thing for us as fans is it wasn't just Staley that's gone. It's also Telesco, which kind of just reassures us of the Spanos is being aware of this is not going how we want it to. Something that it feels like us fans have been aware of for some time now. But
Yeah.
the bad men are gone now, and I'm ready to move forward and get cracking, man. So are you drinking tonight? You got anything over there?
Speaking of Kraken,
There we go.
I have a Four Peaks Brewing Company. Been on that Four Peaks grind lately. This is all I have left in the value pack. I drank all the other wheats and lagers that I like, so I'm left
Yeah.
with a hazy IPA, but it is a hoppy, smooth, convenient IPA. Which I'm not a huge IPA guy, but I'm learning and figuring out that there are a few out there that I do like. So this
I
one's
think
not
the
bad.
I think the older you get into your 20s, the more you suddenly start to get an IPA taste, and then
A little bit, yeah.
by the time you're like late 30s, you'll be a full IPA guy. I think it's a
Just strictly
transition.
craft beer, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much just like it's midlife maturity is developing a taste for
It is
IPA.
like, yeah, I don't know what it is, but it's definitely an acquired taste. You're right. I mean, beer is in general, but then you have an IPA, which just adds a layer onto that, I feel like. But yeah, man, this isn't terrible. Some ASMR for you.
There you
It's
go.
not bad. It's pretty
Sweet
good.
man, love it.
It's pretty smooth, convenient, and hoppy.
What's the alcohol percent in those things? I know those IPAs are loaded typically.
Oh, this one's not bad. It's only 6.5.
Okay. Yeah, that's lower for IPAs. I know I've had some Voodoo Rangers before. Those are like 9 something. So
Yeah, they
those
can get up
are
there.
you can get freaky after about 6 of those. That's for sure.
After 3 for me, bro.
After 3, honestly, I've done some trial and error, and I can tell you 6 of them will make you go home early. So
That is true, and make you
yeah,
feel very poorly the next day.
yes, that is very true. Over here, I'm just sticking. I got the traditional. It's in the koozie here, but it's just a traditional Coors Light for me. But really, I wanted to touch on the Nebraska koozie. Go Big Red. Earlier today, just got the number one player in the country, number one QB, number two overall player in the country to flip from Georgia to Nebraska. So, I mean, hey, I am having a hell of a time as a sports fan. I know there's in season stuff going on, but off-season stuff for me right now has been a blast to keep up with. So that's kind of what I've been up to, man. I'm ready for next year to roll back around. I'm ready for next August, man.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one when college football rolls back. I mean, not a lot to cheer for when you're from Nebraska, but
Until
that's some
now.
big news. So, all right, man, let's go ahead and dive into all this. I cannot wait any longer to talk about Brandon Staley being fired after just shy of 3 seasons with the Chargers. He finished with a 24-24 record, and I think a 500 overall record just sums up his resume perfectly. I mean, tons of ups, tons of downs, more downs than ups. But there definitely were some highs during his tenure. Um, Crazy to think. I had this thought the other day driving in the car. Crazy to think. Not too long ago, there was a time where we were all referring to him as like the Ted Lasso of coaches and in the NFL. And there was so much hype and so much buzz around him. I feel like him winning in Kansas City, uh, on that final drive with Justin Herbert in his first season really, really got the hype train started for Staley. And, that first season was, again, a bunch of highs and lows. And it ultimately ended up in, no playoff appearance, with a pretty brutal loss to the Raiders on I don't know if it was a Saturday night or a Sunday night, but a primetime game and a instant classic. So, you know, goes into a second year, gets into the playoffs, still with some highs and lows throughout the season to get there, and a lot of people are really thinking divisional title, home playoff game. That's kind of the expectation for year two. And doesn't achieve the home playoff game or the divisional title, but he gets in nonetheless to buy him a little bit more time. And then we all know how that ultimately ended. 27-0 blown playoff lead to the Jaguars. And, I feel like there were times last season where he was starting to gain a little bit more credibility. You know, it's amazing how 2 or 3 wins in a row in this league can buy you a lot of time and get a lot of pressure off your back. Because I feel like he was able to do that towards the end of last year. And then ultimately, I think in true Brandon Staley fashion, he just could not get out of his own way. When you make decisions to keep Mike Williams in a game late in the season where you don't need him playing. He gets hurt. Now you don't have him available for the postseason. Um, just tons of little mistakes like that ultimately added up and, you know, did him in. So, yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's one of the worst coaching tenures that this organization has had. And I know they've had some bad ones, but I think you have to put this one up there. Just when you look back, hindsight, and see all the talent that he had. I think that's a theme with a lot of the coaches that have come and gone from this organization is they haven't been able to get it done with the talent that they've been provided. But this was a really bad one because they went all in and it blew up in their face, and this was the end result.
Yeah, I mean, this season the wheels just completely fell off the train. I mean, right away from week one, 500 something yards against the first offense that you play on the season for a defensive head coach. We should have known right there that this was not going to be a great season going forward. And yeah, final straw in Oakland Thursday night, a 63-piece dropped on your defense with basically every notable starter out there, minus Joey Bosa, who really is already past his prime, as we all know. So, I mean, I think you can really sum up his tenure with the Chargers based on just last finishing seasons. We saw, like you mentioned, that Raiders game in Vegas that would have sent us to the playoffs. A weird phantom timeout call when it might have went to a tie, along with a decision to go for it on a 4th and 2 from our own 30-yard line. And then obviously the fateful night in Jacksonville, which followed a week in which Mike Williams got hurt. A lot of injuries could have been put to blame for last year's non-successes, but 27 points in the wild card, blowing that kind of a lead is unacceptable no matter what. And then obviously what happened this last Thursday and really what's been a trend all season, what happened in the Lions game, the Chiefs game earlier this year, just some historic offensive performances have really gone up against this defense. And I mean, it's been written in the stars for a majority of the season. And, a team putting up a record 63 points, a 5-9 team, 5-8 team, mind you, that was final right there, which, I mean, I think at one point we figured this was going to be an end of the season thing, but in that kind of fashion, what else are the Spanos supposed to do? It was just getting humiliating week after week. So, I mean, I'm happy they did it. They finally pulled the trigger. And yeah, I mean, to talk
Yeah.
about Staley's tenure in a word, it would just be really disappointing. I mean, this season, especially the amount of hype that I had going into this season, this has been far and away one of the most disappointing Charger seasons that I've been a part of.
It has been, man. And this is exactly what I hoped the front office, the ownership could have avoided or should have avoided. I don't know. Could have, would have, should have. But I mean, early in the year, we were, I think, probably amongst one of the first people to really call for Staley's job that I know of, just in our little world of Twitter and social media that we interact on amongst Chargers fans. I mean, there's definitely a few others. We weren't first to the party, but I feel like we were early on that wave of seriously being like, hey, like, let's like emotions, frustration aside, why not? Because what do we have to lose? I mean, we have a roster that's basically all in and built for this season. Uh, you know, at worst, like you want to because now it's unsalvageable. Now it's lay down, take your licks, tank, get draft capital, like hedge for that. Look to the offseason. Obviously, you have a GM spot to fill, a head coaching vacancy to fill. So there's a lot on the organization plate already. And I get that they're probably already kind of over this season, just like most of us are. But it didn't have to be that way. I mean, they could have pulled the trigger. They had numerous times to pull the trigger this year. It's not like, they were a team that they looked like shit, but they kept winning. So you can't really fire them when you're 7-2, 6-3 type thing. But they still, they're fraudulent. They were just bad, and they couldn't win. But like the defense was so bad, and this offense has stalled and had its own issues. But ultimately, what got Brandon Staley fired was his defensive performance. When you come in as the defensive guru, this wonder kid that's come through the ranks in 5 seasons from a Division III defensive coordinator to an NFL head coach, you cannot put a defense out on the field that gives up those types of numbers. Like, it just can't happen. And it happened for almost 3 entire seasons. And there were excuses. I get it. First season, they're not his guys. Let him get his guys, get his scheme going. But it just overall never developed. Whatever magic he was able to muster, you know, with the Rams, he just wasn't able to replicate it with the Chargers. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's sad that they couldn't have done it sooner to at least try to see if the season would have played out any different. The AFC is wide open. You know, if they'd done it a month ago, they could be maybe sitting at 500. Who knows, right? There's still some positive, I mean, vibes in that clubhouse, that locker room. But no, those are all gone. And now, I mean, yeah, I guess they had to because of a performance like that. But I mean, it's just a shame that they couldn't have made a decision sooner, because it definitely sounded like they were thinking about it. I mean, there were reports after like week 3 of Harbaugh and already stuff surfacing. So you know they were thinking about it. You know they were probably. And there was another report, I think Cowherd said.
I saw recently within the last week that there were at least 3 different like scenarios in this season in which they almost pulled the plug,
Oh,
but ended up
Schefter. It was Schefter. Schefter
yeah,
said
but
he
then
stayed up.
they ended up giving him the benefit of the doubt for
Yeah, Schefter said he stayed up till like 4 a.m. the night after the Ravens game, because he said he had it on multiple good sources that it was probably going to happen that night after the Ravens game. And so he said he stayed up till like 5 a.m. waiting for the text to break the news. And he goes, just like it happened today, or, you know, whenever it happened a couple days ago. He's like, that's exactly how I was expecting it to happen a couple weeks ago. He goes, ultimately, they didn't pull the trigger. Now they have, and now they're looking for a new coach. So they definitely thought about it. And it's just, yeah, it sucks they were indecisive on it.
yeah, I know. And I really, for me as a fan, the most exciting part now is, we get to go in, evaluate our own candidates, see guys that we know have had a lot of success in the league previously, just like Brandon Staley did, unfortunately. But other guys, that have had success as a head coach. I don't know. I think it would be a decent time. Do you want to rattle off a few candidates that come to your mind that you like?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. So there's a couple that I like, and there's a couple that I'm entertaining. Ultimately, you know, where I'm at with this organization and with this ownership, I mean, they really just needed to go with the safer, proven route. Um, you know, I think they've rolled the dice one too many times on trying to get that, you know, younger, maybe more cost effective guy to come in and, you know, prove himself. And, you know, who knows, you might grab the next Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel. I mean, you don't know. Like, there are good hires, you know, for out of some of these coaching cycles that are guys being head coaches for the first time. It does work. It's just that the Chargers have whiffed pretty much every time they've tried. And that's a reflection, I think, on ownership. John Spanos, Dean Spanos. So that tells me that they just need to stop playing that game and go get the big one. Go get the one. There's a big name every year that surfaces, that is a proven coach with everything you want: experience, moxie, you know, leadership, culture, e- everything. And there's a couple already that have started to kind of surface in this coaching cycle that will be, you know, a Chargers head coaching vacancy. So, I mean, just off the top of my list, right here, um, Bill Belichick, Jim Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin, Ben Johnson, and Dan Quinn. That's really my hot list right now. Going down the line, Frank Smith, the former offensive line coach for the Chargers, who is now the Miami Dolphins offensive coordinator. I would really entertain that as well. And then Ryan Ficken. Ryan Ficken would be probably rounding out my list. So, you know, that's what I'll put Frank Smith as an honorable mention, but I'll go. Um, right now, I have Ben Johnson, Dan Quinn, Belichick, Harbaugh, Tomlin, and Ficken. So I got 6 guys. possibly 7 that I'm really being. I mean, there's other names that floating out there of younger guys that are coming up through the coaching ranks, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. I just really, I mean, give me a Harbaugh, give me a Belichick, or give me a Tomlin, and let's go win a fucking Super Bowl.
Sign me up for Mike Tomlin. I don't think, unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be, realistic of an option along with Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel's another guy that I've seen floating around that I would absolutely love to come be the new coach of this team.
Yeah,
Both those
Tomlin's
guys are
gaining a
such.
little bit. I mean, over the last 2 days, I've seen some more hype around
I
that,
mean,
but
yeah, I guess we don't. Who knows
because
what's going to
of
happen these next 3 weeks? Our list could
yeah,
change a lot over these next 3 weeks.
true,
So
and that isn't. I mean, if there's one pro to you know making the firing in season, now it's like the whole world knows that this is an open job, right? Sometimes you go in. I mean, it's kind of like what maybe deterred Sean Payton from really becoming the coach last year. Like they were so on him at the media fans thought he should have been fired. Chargers, nope, we'll try it one more time. But like they had coaches in waiting last year, and they might have, I don't know, missed out on. I mean, I know the Sean Payton experiment hasn't gone great in Denver, but so I don't know if you would count that out as missing out on, but
definitely gone better these last half of the season.
true. But yeah, so at least now, like, coaches out there around the league, Harbaugh, guys like that maybe you're like thinking about it, but they're not sure if that job that they really want will be open. Now he knows. Now
Yeah.
if Michigan wins the Natty, bro, I'm just saying that could make for an interesting couple of weeks there with just buzz and hype and media, and because I really think if Michigan wins the Natty, Harbaugh might just hold his nuts and be like, yeah, I'm out.
Yeah, no, Harbaugh. I think Harbaugh should be everyone's number one really big want in the league. I mean, we see what he did for San Francisco when he was an NFL coach. He's proven himself there. He's proven himself at the college level, and he's spoke on wanting to work with Justin Herbert before, or at least
Loves
touched on the
Justin,
fact
yeah.
that Justin Herbert is his favorite young QB in the league. So I think if I've seen a lot of reports of Harbaugh, probably leaning towards sticking towards Michigan. But like you said, a lot of those reports came before this job became available, which is one of the sexier jobs out there on the market, especially with Justin Herbert under center. So, I mean, I think that's definitely going to be something that Harbaugh is going to think long and hard about because Spanos, in his interview earlier today, along with saying how much value he thinks there is in hiring a guy that's had previous head coach experience, also said that he doesn't really want to put a price tag towards it. They want to explore every option, regardless of what it's going to take money wise to keep them around. And obviously, with this team headed into the offseason, 30 mil under the cap, it's an uphill battle. But to know that they have that open mind to go out there and really consider most likely some of these, big time names like a Harbaugh or if a Tomlin or Vrabel or Belichick, if guys like that are available, it gives me a lot more peace of mind to know that they see value in that. And they're not going to think with their checkbook right away because they feel the same frustrations as us as fans, regardless
Yeah.
of how bad we want to sit here and scream on our couch and be like, the Spanos are idiots. What are they doing? Like, I promise you, they're just as upset, probably more upset than the
Yeah.
fans. Because at the end of the
And
day,
like,
they're the ones losing money and they're the ones trying to build,
yeah. And
this
if you're a
franchise
fan,
and this fan base.
that's a great segue into something that I wanted to bring up and kind of forgot about. But yeah, I like us as fans, we should demand and expect them to go out and cough up the money and go get a fucking head coach. Like, stop playing these games. Stop. Like, talk is cheap. Talk is really cheap. And when you put out, little messages like they did, and they posted to the socials when, Telesco and Staley got fired. Yeah, that's great. Like, we know you're frustrated. We all are too. Now go make a decision for once that's actually going to benefit the organization and go out and get proven guys. Like, it's not that hard. It just comes with a price. And I don't think, I mean, as a fan, you should never feel guilty about asking them to go out because at the end of the day, we support this team. We buy the gear, we buy the tickets, we go, we tailgate, we travel to see these guys. We It's our money. It's our money that that they're spending, that they're putting into this to build this. So yeah, like, does that mean I might have to pay $25-$30 for a beer when I go to see him at SoFi next year? Probably, but fuck it. Like, I'm gonna go pay it. I'm
If
probably
it
gonna
means
have
we're winning,
3 or
bro,
4
I'll pay
beers.
whatever. I'll pay whatever for a beer if it means we're
Yeah.
winning.
Like, it's the same mentality I had when the Padres started spending like crazy, and it's like, at some point, is it almost too much spending? And I don't think it is. I think if you can make it work, if you can spend smart and not just throw it at, whatever, but set yourself up for future seasons, cap. I mean, there's a way to build it, there's a way to do it. And this is where this might be a good, excuse me, good transition into the GM talk, because a lot of it starts with front office and the general manager. But yes, go ahead real quick.
Yeah, it is. But just real quick, while we're on the topic of head coaches, I mean, you listed a lot of your guys that you mentioned are guys that I'm also a huge fan of.
Oh shit,
Um,
yeah. I didn't
no,
give
no,
you a
we're good.
chance to
We're
give your
good. I
list.
mean,
My bad.
nah, you said pretty much everybody other than one name I wanted to throw in there. But I mean, yeah, a lot of those prove it guys obviously are going to be the first on our list. But Ben Johnson has been that name that we've thrown around forever. And no, he has never been a first time. He has never been a head coach in the league, but he has been in the league since 2012. Unlike Brandon Staley, who really came up and one of his
Yeah.
first roles was on that Rams defense. Didn't have a ton of experience, but I mean, he served as Miami Dolphins assistant, QB's coach, wide receivers coach, all the way up until 2019, and then since then he's obviously ran a very, very nice offense with the Lions. So
Yeah.
definitely one name that all of us have probably accustomed to at this point, but one that I think should be a serious candidate. Deserves an interview at least, nonetheless.
I think he is a very serious candidate. I would not be surprised at all if he is a finalist or towards the top of that list for the Spanos. I'll say this: I really like Ben Johnson, and I know it could be in bad taste to some fans for the Chargers to go down that route again. I know, like, even myself just talking about that a minute ago. But if they are going to go that route, if they are going to go the cost effective route, try to find someone that they can build with and who can start here and be the face of this franchise as far as a coach goes. I mean, you have to go Ben Johnson. There's no other candidate out there that you can. I mean, it's either proven head coach, it's either you go and get a Dragon, you go get a Belichick, a Tomlin, a Harbaugh, or the safe route. Really, in this instance, I mean, depends how you define safe, but a easy backup could be Ben Johnson, because he's got a good situation going for himself in Detroit. If he doesn't really see a situation that he loves, why would you move? That's something that I think a lot of young coordinators that get the opportunity to become coaches, I think a lot of them fuck up by just jumping on the fact that they got offered a head coaching position. Then it's like, if you took 10 seconds to think about it and realize you're going to Carolina, like, you're probably going to be out of a job in 3 years unless you're just a hell of a coach. Like, this is a job opening that really a coach can come in and doesn't have to fucking just doesn't have to do Robert Saleh damage control for 2 years just to fucking, like, this team is, yes, they have some cap issues to solve this offseason, but they're still built to win now. And you'd have to think, I mean, that's where my brain goes. So I would have to think, Ben Johnson, looking at some of these other jobs that might be open, LA would have to be near the top or at the top of his list. So
Yeah, I think a offense consisting of Ben Johnson, Justin Herbert, and then a guy like Brock Bowers or Malik Neighbors would be, that's a
yeah,
man can dream, huh?
and you can come in and you can have that be part of your brand. Is, holy cow, look at this, he just keeps excelling. This young guy comes in, head coach, he excelled with the Lions, now here he is, he's got the top offense again. Sure, he's got Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, and others, but that just it seems like over the recent years, like coordinators are just jumping at head coach offers, and it's like, do you guys even realize where you're going?
Yeah.
Like, I would if I were Salah. I mean, sure, like you have to decide if you want to make that jump at some point, but like I would just fucking be fine being a D coordinator somewhere at a powerhouse until like an ideal position opens, and then maybe you swing in and get something. But I mean, that's hard to
Yeah.
control. I get that, but this
Yeah.
is one of those rare circumstances where a young coach like Ben Johnson could have that opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the first names on my list are those prove it guys. Just after what we've seen the last three of our head coaching hires in McCoy, Lynn, and Staley were all, coordinators that had no previous head coaching experience. So I definitely understand feeling wary about that. But Ben Johnson is definitely an exciting option for those who might want to take a bit more of a risk instead of a prove it guy. And then two other names I had just quick off the top of my head, guys, that I've just kind of heard about that I know have added to some pretty good situations in the past for some teams. Mike McDonald, the Ravens defensive
Defense
coordinator,
coordinator.
they've had a very very successful unit this year. Over the last few years, especially, they've built that unit very well. I know when I think of the Ravens, my mind immediately goes towards how scary their defense is. So
But how long
uh,
has he been the coordinator there? Wasn't it Wink Martindale for a long
Yeah,
time?
so he was Michigan's DC last year.
Ah,
So he was back in college, but he was a defensive assistant slash defensive backs coach slash linebackers coach from 2015 to 2020 for the Ravens. So very familiar with a lot of those guys on the team. Has been a part of that defense for a very long time. But I think there was some stat earlier this year. The Ravens started off on some historic pace through like the first 7 weeks of the year, with like their yardages given up and things along that nature. And when you think about it, the Ravens don't have a ton of big names on that defense, but they just work together as a unit really well. So, I mean, that's one guy that whose name I would throw out there. And another one is, um, I think it's Bobby Slowick, the
yeah.
offensive coordinator for the Texans. Obviously, he's done a lot with guys like Tank Dell, C.J. Stroud, Nico Collins, doing a lot with not a ton down there in Houston. And he was a former 49ers guy, was a member of their offensive staff for a long time. So those are just a few names that I've seen thrown around that I have taken a bit of an interest in. But yeah, other than those big time guys, Ben Johnson would be far and away my favorite candidate.
Yeah, I would not be mad about Ben Johnson at all. I would go the proven route first, but obviously, I mean, if they get into talks with Harbaugh or Belichick or any one of those guys, and they just can't swing it, can't afford it, then 100%, that should be your Ben Johnson should be your plan B, like plan 1A, really.
Yes. Yeah, totally. I think Ben Johnson is just the kind of guy that is going to elevate Justin Herbert, like we've talked about forever, especially, when we were in our coaching talks when we hired Brandon Staley. We know we wanted to bring in a guy to build around 10. And I mean, they did that this last season with Kellen Moore, but it is kind of one of those things that I don't love making a move from defensive coordinator head coach to defensive coordinator head coach. It's kind of like now that we've tapped into that defense side of the ball, that didn't work out. Then, if we get an offensive minded guy to come in and run the show and then bring in another solid DC, then that's
There's
kind of
just
what I'm leaning
yeah,
towards.
there's more advantage. I mean, personally, in my humble opinion, I think there's more advantages if you bring in an offensive minded head coach when you have a top elite quarterback. I think it just makes the most sense because I think what happens with offensive coordinators, if you have a good one, you won't hold on to him for very long. Because it's easy to just be like, okay, we hired a coach, he's a defensive guy. Awesome. He's going to run the defense. Perfect. Now all he has to do is go out and hire a decent or a good offense coordinator. Okay, well, the good ones probably aren't going to leave where they're at. Like they're just going to stay where they're at until that head coaching job becomes available, or they get poached. Right? They're good on a okay team, and a better team comes calling, and they're like, yeah, better quarterback. better this, better weapons, 100%. I'm going to ditch the fucking, you know, Seahawks for the fucking Chiefs. Like, duh. But I think more often than not, if you have like, that's just a opening or a job that you're going to potentially continue to have to fill, if that makes sense. Whereas if your head coach is the offensive guy, the play caller, awesome. Now I think defensive coordinators, they don't get hired as often as offense coordinators. So now that's a position where if you have a good one, I mean, look how long Steve Spagnuolo has been in Kansas City. He's been there since 2019. You
Yeah.
know, like he's one of the top defense coordinators in the game, and he isn't getting poached really anytime soon, I think, to be a head coach. And he's not going to leave to go be a D coordinator elsewhere. So I think there's just more advantages, especially when you have a quarterback like Herbert, to just have the head coach be offensive minded and have that side of the ball taken care of, because that's your strong suit. Like to try and be like, oh, let's get a defensive guy. So like, no, we can fix a defense with just getting a good defensive coordinator. The strong suit of this team is 10. Build around that. Go get an offensive coordinator or offensive minded head coach to team up with him and take you to new heights. Don't go get a defensive guy. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
I completely agree, man. I mean the the vision of this team is on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah. Like
That's
always
our
has been,
that
always
is our
will be,
identity.
as long as he's
That's
there.
our identity with Justin Herbert at quarterback. You
Yeah.
know, we are. I mean, look what Mike McDaniel's doing to Miami with an explosive offense. You know, their defense is mid pack, but when you have an offense that, you know, can hang 40 even given week, then you can get away with a pretty mid defense. And I mean, the problem with Staley's whole tenure is our defense was below mid, and in doing so, we did our offense zero favors. So I completely
Yeah.
agree. Bringing in an offensive guy and just, you know, building around Justin Herbert, building around our superstar quarterback who we just paid, you know, a quarter of friggin' $500 million, it feels like. Build
Yeah.
around him and, you know, have that be your identity going forward. Continue with your offensive identity. You know, when people think of the Chargers, they think about Justin Herbert. They don't think about friggin' Kenneth Murray. So
Yeah. It's
continue to
funny. I
build that
say
side of the
don't.
ball.
I'm saying don't bring in a defensive guy, but 2 of the 3 proven guys I talked about are defensive guys. So
But
it's like,
I think with
but
those
again,
defensive guys,
Belichick, I think, is the ultimate like anomaly. Like obviously, if you can go get Belichick, and he's a defensive guy. But then again, like that's
I think Harbaugh too. You know, a name like Harbaugh is going to draw in so many guys that are going to want to be a
Harbaugh
coordinator for this
defense or
team.
offense.
I think Harbaugh's a defensive guy.
Fuck, I think you're right. They're all defensive. Shit. Okay, never mind. What do I know?
I
I
actually
always go
don't
back
know.
and forth. I know John's a defensive guy, but Jim always stumps me. Sometimes I think he's offense.
I don't know. I'll find out. But I thought he was a defensive guy.
I think you're right.
So I don't know. But
But I mean, yeah, that also is a good kind of reminder. It's like you don't have to be an offensive minded. I mean, there's a lot of good defensive minded head coaches out there. I mean, Vrabel, um, the Bills coach, can never remember his name.
Sean McDermott.
Sean McDermott, yeah. Belichick, obviously. Tomlin, obviously. Harbaugh. Like there's a lot of really good defensive minded coaches out there that have made great head coaches. So that, I mean, you just got to get the right guy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Harbaugh was actually, well, Harbaugh played QB. So that's actually a good question, guys. I don't
That's what
do
always
not
stumps me.
quote
He was a
us.
quarterback.
All that I know, but so was John. So and John's a defensive guy. So
So was Staley.
well, Staley's a bum. So I don't know, guys. We want Harbaugh. I don't care what he does.
Yeah.
It's a big enough
But
name. It's
more than
that has
anything,
a
I
lot of
think,
success in the NFL that makes me
yeah,
want to
more than
see.
X's
I
and
want to see
O's, like
khakis and powder blue go together.
more than anything, more than X's and O's, I think Staley is the perfect example. I mean, we're coming off of literally the perfect example of like why it's more than X's and O's, because when Staley got hired, we all heard how he nailed his interview and how he sounded amazing, and he was this guru and everyone loved him, and he was just like this breath of fresh air for Chargers fans coming off the Anthony Lynn era. But it's clear that like you need more. You need more than that, because if you can't build a culture, if you can't build, you know, if you don't have leadership to build something in that locker room, in that building, like it doesn't fucking, it all just goes to shit. None of it fucking matters. And that's where I think, the Chargers hit on that with Anthony Lynn, but he, I mean, that's all he could really do. I mean, he's a running back, couldn't really call plays. Had Wisenhunt and Steichen calling the plays for him. Never ran the defenses. Like, he was just kind of like a game manager, culture guy, and that got him pretty far with the talent that he had. I mean, 2018, that proves that like that team, that locker room was strong enough to go on a deep playoff run, and they proved that they could do that. So that side of it was there with Anthony Lynn, but you have to have both. You can't just have one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of building, man, I think this is a perfect transition into the GM talk. But I did see earlier today that Spanos aren't necessarily, taking GM or head coaching hire, as it's a 1A, 1B situation for them. They're not going to focus on one before the other. I think it's just kind
Yeah.
of how the hiring process goes, which I kind of found fascinating. For me, I've always thought that the GM plays such a big role in that hiring aspect that would be the first guy that they would want to go after. But when you think about it, as if your first task is GM of a football team without really feeling out the culture, knowing your players, stuff like that, is to hire a head coach, then I think it makes perfect sense for the Spanos to handle this head coaching, or excuse me, this GM hiring and head coaching hiring process. So it's definitely going to be different over the years, the head coaching process with a new GM and with the Spanos probably having more reins on it than we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I like that they said that they're not focusing on one, before the other. I think that's the right way to approach it. I definitely am. It's hard right now for me to decide what I'm more fascinated with, the head coaching search or the GM search, because uh, at this time we're a little bit more seasoned when it comes to being in a search of a head coach. We've had a few go arounds, but when it comes to GM, I mean, the one thing that's been constant over the last, well, now, four or three coaches, I really should say, uh, is the GM, Tom Telesco. So it really is fascinating to see what the Spanos family, how they're going to evaluate, how they'll narrow down their list of what they're looking for. Daniel Popper put together kind of a hot list earlier this week, and I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend like I know these names or knew these names before he came out with this list. I don't know a lot of people that follow NFL front office personnel that closely until these types of searches get going. But there's a few names that immediately that jump off the list to me, and it's more so organization related. This is a copycat league, and I think the Spanos should make this search as simple as possible and just say, who can we go and steal from? Who are some of the best run organizations who, just do things the right way? They know how to build rosters. They know how to build culture. You know, treat players the right way. Like everything that you could imagine, like what the perfect front office GM looks like. I mean, just go steal that from someone, because there's plenty of guys. I mean, the 49ers organization, you could hire pretty much anyone from that front office, and I would be fine with. I mean, that's such a proven, well-run organization, and it's actually, uh, the first one on his list. Adam Peters, assistant GM from the Niners, um, is first on his list, and immediately that's all I needed to know about about the list. I'm like, perfect. Like, I hope the
I mean,
Chargers see this list, because this is really all they should be looking at. I mean, he has Kansas City assistant GM on here. Um, the Ravens director of player personnel, just solid organizations to steal from that, I see this happen in baseball a lot. There's certain teams that just draft well, they develop well, they're always just run really well, and they make them like the Rays. Like everyone, wants to steal from the Rays because they're this organization that can just, for whatever they're doing, they're just doing things the right way. They find talent in places that other organizations can't. They develop it. They have all these guys come up through their organization that end up really just going elsewhere because the Rays can't afford them. But really, I mean, just a super well run organization. And to me, I think the Chargers should just start there and go poach someone from a Niners, a Ravens, a Kansas City, um, and try to replicate what any of those guys are doing.
Yeah, this off season is definitely different for me. I think when it comes to coaching, it's easy to keep up with. Hey, he's been a successful coordinator for a while. Like he probably deserves a shot. But when it comes to GMs, like I mean, the last time we were looking for a GM when we hired Telesco, I was like 12 years old. I didn't know what GM even stood for, let alone what their
General
role was
Motors.
within an organization. Well, yeah, I have since learned that it means general manager. Thank you very much. But I mean, so this is totally new for me, but I'm kind of with you on this. It's really easy to, look at lists of candidates and just see guys that come from organizations that have been run really well for a long amount of time. Like the 49ers, like the Chiefs. A guy that I saw
The
originally
Eagles,
that I'm
yeah.
looking at now is Alec Hallaby, Philadelphia Eagles assistant general manager.
Yep.
I've been a huge fan of how the Eagles have drafted for, quite a few years now. It feels like time and time again, we're always like, how does Howie do this? But obviously, a guy like a guy like this Alec Hallaby character is going to learn from a guy like Howie.
Yeah.
So,
And it's not always just Howie, you never know where some of that input comes
exactly.
from that,
So just
and
going based off that, I mean, we talked about how Telesco was, a pretty decent drafter, really, for most of his time. So I'm looking at teams that I've loved what they do during the draft. I mean, the last 3 years, I've found myself saying, like, how are the Eagles pulling this off and, getting some of these players that we've seen them take in the draft. So, I mean, that's initially me not really knowing much about, the actual GMs from other teams. That's how I look at it from my perspective is who is coming from teams that I just like how they've run, how they've been doing,
yeah.
how they draft, how they develop, things like that. And
And I
guy
think
from
that's
the
how,
Eagles, 49ers, teams like that are
yeah.
prime for that kind of stuff.
And I think that's how most of us look at it, and I think that's how most people should look at it. Like, again, like I'm not sitting up here trying to pretend like I know my front office talk because I don't. But most people don't. Like most people don't even. I mean, shit. There's still rules being enforced on on games that I'm watching. That I'm like, oh shit, I didn't know that was like how that rules and like I'm still learning about the game all the time. And yeah, like I don't think most fans keep up with that front office personnel. But yeah, I'm the same way. I think look, just make it simple. Go get someone from a proven organization, an assistant GM or director of player personnel, and this is another great opportunity. Like we are ushering in a new era of Chargers football. Like we haven't really been. I mean, we've been able to say that a few times over the last couple of coaching changes, but really like this is different because this is front office changing over somewhat. This is coaching staff turning over. This is a completely different approach from the Telesco era. I mean, whoever you bring in, they're going to have their own philosophy. They're going to have their own way of doing things, of building things. They're going to have their own vision of what that looks like. And so I think that's just the most exciting thing at this point. We know who our quarterback's going to be next year. We know a lot of guys that are going to come back. There's
Do,
a few
do
question
we?
marks.
Are you sure we do? I don't know if we know much of what we're going to see next year. I think that
Well,
this is
I
going to be
think
an off
there's a
season.
few question marks as far as to like some people
Oh
that
well,
are like,
yeah. Overall, yes.
Mike Williams, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Keenan Allen, like those types of guys. However, I do think half of those guys will stay and half of them will be gone. But outside of that, I mean, again, it just what it does is it gets a fresh pair of eyes on this organization because the same guy's been looking, at this roster, been running the show for the last 11 seasons. Now you get a fresh set of eyes that can come in and be like, oh shit, like they're either going to come in and be like, fuck, this is how you guys been operating, like 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 a new owner of a restaurant taking over, like shit, this is how you guys been doing it around here, like nah, and just completely reset, refocus, reshift what that vision looks like, and I think that's a good thing overall. I just think as long as they don't get someone that like completely doesn't know what the fuck they're doing, um, you're fine.
Yeah, I mean, especially, this is such a favorable situation for anyone with, you have your franchise guy. We don't have to go into a full rebuild. If anything, we might be seeing a mini rebuild next year, but it's not like we're going to be looking for the face of our franchise going forward.
Yeah.
We know who that guy is. I think it's just about building around him and, building the other side of the ball just good enough to
Yeah.
keep us afloat, honestly.
Yeah, and you mentioned the word rebuild. The exciting thing about this rebuild, call it a rebuild if you want, but the Chargers are probably going to be a playoff team next year if they just get out of their own way. Like they're a
If they just
playoff
don't
team.
charge her.
If they're a playoff team this year if the defense isn't god awful and they don't continue to lose those 3-point, 4-point games. Like a couple of those swing differently, and Staley's probably still here, and we're probably in a playoff hunt. Like that's, and are we really in a better situation there long term? Probably not. But that's my whole point is someone can come in next year and just with this roster alone and the quarterback alone, the first year of the rebuild is probably a wild card team. And then you go from there. And then I mean, as you right some of the wrongs over your first year, get the the cap situation more in your favor, continue to tweak some things. I mean, this is really a job where I really do expect the Chargers to be competitive next year, more competitive than they were this year. I think this year was just a complete and utter disaster, failure, letdown, disappointment. I mean, I don't think anyone envisioned 5-9 with Herbert on the sideline for the season. I also don't think anyone expected Staley to get fired in season or Telesco in season. So it's just been a season of curveballs, and it's almost over. There's better days to come, but I really think what gets me excited is just the opportunity that they have to get fresh eyes in there and start. Yeah, I guess I don't know. Call it a rebuild. I mean, let's call it a mini rebuild, but it really is probably one of the best rebuilds you could ask for, just given the roster and the quarterback.
Mini rebuild, if you will. But yeah, man, kind of me right now as a fan, we're looking at 3 games left in the season. I, I love our boys. Always want them to go out there and win and play the game well. But if this means top 10 pick or top 8, top 7 pick, and we're going into, that Brock Bowers, that, who knows, maybe Marvin Harrison, most likely not, but Malik Neighbors, or even guys like Kool-Aid McKinstry, Laitu Latu from UCLA. Like, there's just so many intriguing options, especially offensively, that I think can shape this team so much going forward. That for the rest of the season, if I'm gonna watch the final 3 games, but if the boys want to trip up a little bit and secure us that top pick, then I'm not gonna be too upset about it. But yeah, with that, interim head coach Jiff Smith, and our
Yes.
interim GM JoJo Wooden. I don't know shit about either. I don't know if you got some intel on them, but Jiff and JoJo are 2 pretty cool names, so I'm gonna
Is
give
it
them the
GIF or
benefit of the doubt.
GIF?
I don't know. It's a
God,
good
this is just
question.
like when the actual like when GIFs came out.
GIF, but GIF is just GIF. This one's
Yeah.
GIFF, so it could
I don't
be.
know. I know GIF has been around for a minute. He's been around as long as Bosa's been around. So he's got to be one of the more respected
Yeah, he was D line.
staff
He was the D
guys.
line coach from 2016. So yeah, he's been pretty much with Joey his whole tenure.
So he's probably one of, if not the most respected coach on that staff, which
I believe he was the longest tenured. He is our longest tenured coach, which
yeah.
is why they made that decision.
I was actually a little surprised it wasn't Ficken. I thought they really would go to that, but did I read something that Kellen Moore turned down the head coaching
I read that as
position?
well. I don't know how much truth there is to it, but I have seen that somewhere also.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much truth there is to that either. I saw it on Twitter, so take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, I don't know. I was curious if you saw that, but no, I mean, I think this will be interesting. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how much fight they come out with the next 3 weeks. Should definitely be more than what they have been the last couple of weeks. I don't see how it really could get worse. Um, but that'll be interesting. And then yeah, JoJo Wooden, interim GM, already making some moves. Waived Max Duggan today, and went off and signed Will Greer from the
Yeah,
Patriots practice squad. So
yeah,
already
man.
wheeling and dealing.
Will
Um,
Greer, West Virginia legend. Love that dude.
yeah,
But
yeah, already wheeling and dealing. He should be on the list of guys to interview for that GM spot as well. I mean, I think he deserves at least an interview. I don't know if he gets it, but he seems like a guy that's, I don't know how long he's been with the organization, but I think he's been around for a few years.
yeah, I believe so too. In some capacity. I think he's moved around our organization a little bit, but yeah, he's definitely familiar.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's going to be, like you mentioned, 3 games left. It really, I mean, depends on how, I mean, are you really going to embrace the tank, culture, that's up for you as a fan to decide. I'm
I'm
kind of
so
torn
in.
on it. I mean, at this point, if Herbert's out, then I'm pretty much full tank. If
Yeah,
Herbert was in, it's hard to root against Herbie, but
that's my thought process
right now,
exactly.
I
It's like,
really
what
just
are we playing for right
I
now?
need to squeeze the most out of this roster for my fantasy team. I'm in the playoffs. I'm in the semis this week. So if
Yeah,
Eckler and if Keenan can go, bro, I'm dying for Keenan to
this
go.
guy,
Keenan has to go this week and just go get like 10 points. That's all I need.
this guy, bro. But yeah, honestly, fuck your fantasy team. I hope they shut down Keenan for the rest of the year. I
Sounds like a
just,
guy that didn't make the playoffs.
correct. But that's neither here nor there. If I had Keenan on my team, yeah, we'd probably be having a different conversation about that.
I got him
But
in the second round, late in the second round this year, bro. People have been sleeping on him.
that's actually crazy. I think he was like a 4th or 5th round pick in our league. So, but hey, I mean, he went crazy this year. Hope that he can pad some stats a little bit more. I do want this to be his best season ever. But yeah, no Justin Herbert. I'm full tank mode. I want weapons. I want a top 10 pick. There's something so much more sexy about picking in the top 10 than there is doing mock drafts and trying to predict who's going to be there at like 24. So, just for my perspective, I think I've already done like 20 mocks. So, I'm ready, man. Draft season for me is right around the corner. So,
Yes, sir. Chargers take on, who do they even play? Oh yeah, they play the Bills this week. That's
play the
where I'm at with
Bills.
that. Who do they
We
play
play
this
the
week?
Bills Saturday night. It's
Saturday night.
it's going to be ugly, very ugly. But I'm gonna watch. I will pride myself. I watched the entire Raiders game, as a matter of fact, and found myself laughing uncontrollably by the end of it, as it did expose Brandon Staley as the fraud that he is. So,
Yeah, I had multiple
and
friends texting
proves,
me.
man, proves how valuable Justin Herbert is.
True.
So
I think
that's the silver lining for me.
Mina
And Keenan.
Kimes tweeted out like Justin Herbert MVP like during the
Pretty
game.
much, yeah.
Like
Herbert's gonna
yeah,
get
you're not
MVP.
wrong.
Herbert got MVPs from last Thursday's game. MVP votes from last
Yeah, for
Thursday's
sure.
game. So
No, that's actually hilarious. But yeah, man, it's gonna be really interesting to see how the rest of the season goes. And yeah, Chargers Bills, that could be a not so fun one. I don't know how much of it I'll watch, if I'll watch any at all. It's a Saturday night. The Saturday night games are tough. Even
definitely.
in years past, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, it's Saturday. So it kind of throws stuff off a little bit. But yeah, ultimately, we'll see where the draft scenario ends up. And yeah, man, I mean, again, I think this is ultimately a good thing for this organization. You had to get rid of Brandon Staley. You had to let Tom Telesco go, usher in a new era, and like Justin Herbert's got a long career left. There's a ton of time to work with as far as this window. We've talked about it before. The window is Justin Herbert's career. That's your window. So I'm not really concerned. I mean, if you
A
really
lot of
want to,
ball left.
talk long term, like they could have a 5-year, 10-year plan at this point, and I'm fine with it because as long as Justin Herbert's in the building, I'm ready to rock and roll. We can go back to the drawing board. That's fine. Don't want to do it too many more times, but at least we have an opportunity to really right the ship here.
Yeah, really, really exciting offseason coming up. Big draft pick, new GM, new head coach. Definitely gonna have some studies for us to do going forward. But I'm excited for it, man. I'm more excited for this offseason than I've been in a while. I know
I was just
I've
gonna
probably
say
said
it's
that.
gonna make
I've probably
for
said that almost every offseason since like we've gotten Justin Herbert.
yeah.
But I mean, this time's full clean slate, man.
I was
And
just gonna say that because like it does make for a really. I mean, anytime like big changes like that are made, like the off season, there's always hype, there's always buzz. But when you're going through major organizational changes, it's like this off season is going to be insane. Like every article, I mean, the buzz and the hype leading up to training camp for this team is going to be insane over the off season, especially if they really go out and nail these two hires. If they go out and nail these two hires, we're probably going to be off season champs
and
again. We're probably going to be like, oh, Chargers landed Harbaugh, so that ultimately makes them a Super Bowl favorite, like type shit.
I mean, yeah. I mean, yeah. But no, actually, man, nail these two hires, nail a top 10 pick, and we're gonna be sitting pretty. Nail
And
nail nail some cap space this offseason. Nail your
people
cuts.
forget the Niners drafted third overall and got Nick Bosa, and that was not too long ago.
Yeah.
Like
So
big turnarounds can happen quick, and that I believe they were in the Super Bowl next year against Kansas City, right?
I yeah, that would have been Nick's rookie year. So
So like these crazy turnarounds can happen. You can go out and put together a very highly competitive team and be very competitive next year. So I'm excited, man. And with that, unless you have anything else, let's go ahead and get out of here because I know it's getting late over where you're at. And yeah, I kind of want to watch the rest of this Monday night game.
yeah. No, let's do that, man. Really excited for this offseason. And yeah, let's
And
get it.
that's it. And that's all.
Bolt up.
Thank you guys for listening to another episode of Chargers Powder Hour, episode number 101. Colin and Miles here. Make sure to follow us on our social medias on Instagram and Twitter at Powder Hour Pod LA. That is our handle for both. And as always, bolt up. We will catch you next time. Peace.